Hi, I'm Camilla from Linköping University, and I have, together with my colleagues Paul Horton and Robert Thornberg, conducted this study that I'm here to present for you today. We don't need to play rough, right? Pupils' perspectives on the football pitch, bullying, and gender. So, what do we know about the football pitch and the school playground? Yeah, previous research has actually revealed that it's dominated by certain pupils, and it's a site for gendered identity constructions. And this means actually that both boys and girls are affected. For example, boys can experience homophobic bullying, whereas girls can be excluded for not being perceived to be good enough at playing or for not wanting to play. So it's a lot of hierarchical pecking orders being established in relation to the football pitch. And some pupils actually also withdraw from the football pitch due to all of these processes. Some studies have also attended to various spatial factors that interact with the social processes at the football pitch. And they have revealed that lack of space and equipment might be associated with what's going on there. They've also found that sometimes the football pitch actually dominates large parts of the playground, which pushes other activities and pupils to the margins, and that teachers' involvement might affect these processes. But studies investigating the importance of spatial, material, and organizational factors for understanding school bullying are still very rare. And so, in our study, we investigate the relations between bullying and the institutional context of schooling. And in this particular study, we have investigated the football pitch. And one of our starting points is actually that football might be related to feverish emotions. It evokes feverish emotions sometimes. And so in this study, we are particularly interested in how spatiality, materiality, and temporal organization of the school football pitch contribute to the evocation of feverish emotions and how school bullying can occur when these reach fever pitch. And we use a social ecological framework to investigate these relations between spatiality, materiality, and temporal organization. What is a social ecological perspective? Well, a social ecological perspective views several factors as interconnected in shaping, for example, school bullying. And we have the micro, meso, exo, and macro system. And the microsystem is the immediate setting. That is what we are studying here when we refer to the peer ecology and the playground at the school. And it includes what the pupils are doing, how they use space, how they experience space. And it relates to all of these other systems that also affect what is actually going on in this microsystem. For example, what you do out of school, if you participate in football out of school, in an out-of-school activity, you might want to enforce the same rules in school when you play football in school. And for example, the exercise system, how your school day is scheduled, how the teachers are scheduled, what decisions have been made on what space you have to play football at, and how that space looks. And the macro system with gender or societal norms and ideas that affects what is going on in the immediate setting. So the data in this specific study comes from an ethnographic study where we combine observations and semi-structured interviews. And we first conduct observations, and these inform the pupil interviews. And we have spent 2 to 3 weeks per grade. We've been to preschool classes up to 6th grade classes, depending on how the 3 schools were, how they looked. For example, in Hillside and Woodland, we went to the preschool class, 2nd grade class, and 5th grade class. But Clifton, and these are several names that we've given our 3 schools, had mixed classes. So we also included 3rd grade and 4th grade, for example, for 1st grade. We have conducted 31 group interviews and 1 individual interview with 121 pupils. And we have used a constructivist grounded theory approach throughout this project. So, what do our findings tell us? Well, in line with previous research, it also turns out to be the case that the football pitch is a hotspot for disputes, violent play, injuries, harassment, exclusion, and bullying. We also found that social status socially ordered the interactions at the football pitches, and these were clearly associated with age, grade, and gender. And it was a lot of physicality in the game, and that also meant that some pupils avoided playing or even going to the football pitches. It was perceived to be a male space dominated by males. And all of these aspects interact with the spatial, material, and organizational factors such as school design, material construction of the pictures, and the temporal organization of the space. And we will look at these elements now. So, in terms of spatiality, physicality, and school bullying, we see in our study that football was a popular activity that attracted a large number of pupils. All of the 3 schools had a specific space where football could be played. At Hillside, it was a separate area where mostly only football was played because it was a football pitch. At Woodland and Clifton, the space where football was played was also incorporated as parts of the playground. So it didn't have an own space, and the spaces at Woodland and Clifton was also spaces where other activities could be played, like other ball games, for example. Woodland had a very cramped playground to start with, and so the football pitch could not easily be avoided. And pupils who were not even involved in playing could still be risk being hit by a football or affected by what went on at the football pitch. At all 3 schools, the football pitches were perceived to be unsafe. You risk being struck by football or affected by it, and it was also considered to be unsafe because it was dominated by boys and because they were perceived to engage in rough gaming. And actually, when talking with pupils, it appeared to be a certain degree of physicality was also expected in the course of the games. And this physicality can take the form of disguised bullying interactions. When we play football, there are 2 people who always want to be in the same team, and they are not allowed because they shoot at people with intention, and they do it against a certain person. You know who it is? Kind of, they shoot so that it will go into the goal and so on. And then when Simon, that is the teacher, is not there, then they take the chance to be in the same team sometimes. The materiality then, and how that relates to the fewer interactions and school bullying. Well, the pitches at Woodland and Clifton were made of concrete, whereas the pitch at Hillside was made of gravel. Now, as we can see from that is that it caused a lot of safety issues, and a lot of pupils could get seriously injured when falling on the concrete or the gravel, which also happened a few times. Teachers were aware of the safety issues related to the design, and they were frustrated about it. And pupils could get hurt and were hurt, and there were very busy areas, the football pitches, where pupils also competed for the same space. And they also raised injury concerns that related to the lack of space and the structure of the pitch. And This materiality had implications for the feud and conflictual interactions. The physical structure were perceived to lead to more conflicts, and the ever-present risk of injury meant that some pupils might also overreact to what might otherwise be a smaller challenge for them, and might have led to more temporary conflicts. But now, due to the injuries they got or risked getting when falling, it could actually contribute to more sustained harassment and bullying instead. I remember Brian from Fort, you know the shoulder to shoulder in football. I did not even do it hard. And after that, he started calling me an idiot, insane, no idiot, negro, why I came to this country. And then he started putting me, tearing my clothes, started kicking me, hitting me, and finally he started chasing me. So I tried. I didn't even want to dispute because it was just unnecessary. It is a waste of time to have disputes. And he just started following me all the time and kicking me as hard as he could right here type. So this boy is referring to this as a dispute, but we can see it involves repetition, and it's a lot of racist name calling and so forth. And in another interaction with this boy, he also mentioned that he actually stopped going to the football pitch for a while due to these incidents happening. But he reflects that it's a small, shoulder to shoulder, that he didn't even do it hard, but the physicality and the material aspect and how it all interacts makes this a very, fevered emotion and tense interactions. And so the third aspect then, the temporal organization, that actually looks at teachers' presence or absence, and how pupils are scheduled. We've seen already that it was a very busy space because it was popular, and sometimes the playground was cramped as a woodland where they competed for this space. And so a lot of the pupils were actually scheduled on break time the same time. And so different groups in different grades came together at certain times. And it gathered large number of pupils at the same time, which led to conflicts between grades. And it could include all sorts of arguments and disagreements about rules, but also more physical elements, as we've also seen. And it could be minor conflicts that escalated to fever pitch, where others became involved. And different grades trying to take control of the space and competition of the space. And it also related to gender distinctions. Some girls withdraw from even trying to play. Some girls talked about how they were excluded. And at Hillside, for example, they had introduced a girl-only day to end rough gaming and to make the space more inclusive for girls. And teachers were not, however, present at all times to enforce this rule, and in their absence, certain incidents happened. So we've seen that the football pitch was hierarchically organized by age, and when introducing this girl-only day, it was met with resistance, especially from the boys, and the boys were viewed as the problem and as those playing rough. And we got an example here from a discussion among the fifth graders at Hillside. The day begins with questions and feedback from the student council. One question that has apparently been raised is whether there should be separate times for girls and boys football. Melody announces that girls soccer would remain, but no boys soccer. And teacher Tesk asks Melody if there is any argument for why no football. And Melody says that when everyone is running and playing, everyone can participate, but it can be a little hard when it's just boy football. Some guys react. Henry says, who says a girl cannot play rough? A guy makes a fist with his hand and says feminism. And teacher Tess says, we should never play rough and hard. That last week we agreed that no rugby manners. And so there was a lot of resistance, and also the girls at Hillside were not happy about this and thought that the school separated boys and girls, which might actually also fuel, the gendered interactions at the football pitch. But it also misses the point with the social status processes among grades when only separating like this between genders. So to sum it up, spatial, material, and organizational factors affect the processes at the football pitch. School design, the material construction of the pitches, and the temporal organization of the space, with, for example, then scheduling affects the processes. And it's an interplay of social ecological factors. At the micro level, we have the gendered social hierarchical processes and the sometimes upcoming conflicts and social hierarchies and the physicality. And at the meso levels, it is pupils and teachers from different grades. We have their out of schools activities affecting what rules they want to enforce at the football pitch in school. At the exo level, we have scheduling of teachers and pupils. There are not enough teachers out there, and there's a lot of pupils out there. We have the pitch design and how decisions have been made about what areas that should be designated for football, and the actual design that's on concrete, financial issues that might be related to decisions of the design, and micro aspects such as gender norms, rough gaming norms, and football culture and such. So, thank you for your attention.
Yes, greetings from Turku University, Finland. Why is it so hard? This is a project we're currently working on, some preliminary first results on really challenging bullying cases. It's a qualitative analysis that we have been working on, so it kind of nicely flows with Camilla's presentation on the qualitative side of investigation. You might be aware that there are several recent meta-analyses, and they indicate that bullying prevention programs, they reduce prevalence of bullying by 20 or 15 to 20% on average, but it's evident that some cases remain unsolved, and it's known, there's robust findings that bullies really is a serious risk for well-being of students, and especially in the cases where the overall level of bullying tends to decrease, the remaining victims, they even suffer more, which is called the healthy context paradox, and this has been investigated recently also. And these notions led us to think about the cases that remain unsolved, and of course it's important to intervene in all of the cases, and teachers are at the heart of recognizing bullying, intervening in bullying, and we wanted to have a look how do teachers perceive the cases that are extremely challenging to solve. This is something that has not been investigated that much. There's not research on the topic. Candidate features that could constitute or be part of a case that is considered to be challenging bullying case. We listed some here that we could find from previous research. Well, it is known that not all victims are recognized, even when an intervention is taking place. So although school has an intervention program and a plan to reduce bullying and intervene, still some cases remain unrecognized. What is the reason for this? Could be, for example, that bullying is taking place outside of the school, online, for example, and teachers at times think that these are challenging cases. They're not, in a way, under their control. The bullying takes place somewhere outside, and that brings kind of external challenge solving these problems. Also, it is known that some forms of bullying are very covert, hidden. It might be that friendships are involved bullying takes place in close relationships, or the cases are extremely complex, and quite often, for example, when I go train teachers, they quite often refer to bullying taking place among girls that might be extremely complicated, who bullies whom, and the roles are shifting, and everyone's blaming another one, and they might be extremely complicated. Yet, there's also evidence that some of the victims might be provocative themselves, and this is another feature that could contribute to cases that can be challenging to solve. Also, bullying behavior might be extremely persistent, very aggressive, continuous, and it seems that the behavior of the bully, for example, doesn't change at all, or this holds for the whole school class. And unfortunately, sometimes the parents' attitudes or behaviors are not that helpful. They're not on board trying to solve the case and might have accusations or attitudes that are not really helpful. And this recent piece of Kaufman and colleagues, I think this is an important one as well. Children reporting particular high levels of peer rejection, internalizing problems, and lower quality parent-child relationships. Those were the ones. This was actually done during an intervention. These were the pupils that the victimization tended to continue. So in a way, it's an indication that sometimes many things pile up to create a challenging bullying case. But I think this Everskog study, is probably one and only I could find that is actually concentrating on challenging cases. So we wanted to know what are the specific qualities that make a certain case of bullying challenging for teachers to address. What are they like? What is the reality that teachers face at school when some cases are extremely difficult to solve? So we are looking at what characteristics of bullying cases are typical, and how have teachers tried to intervene and solve these cases? What do they do when they face something that is really, really difficult and tricky to solve? Our research material, it's written descriptions of real-life challenging bullying cases. They have been collected in the beginning of a one-year training course for Finnish basic education teachers a few years ago. And before even this one-year training, they were given a pre-assignment, and they were asked to describe in writing a challenging bullying case that they have been involved with. So it was a short description, and out of the participants, 132 gave a written consent that we could use these descriptions in research. Most of the participating teachers that provided us with this description, they were females, most from primary school, 30 from secondary schools, and then in Finland we have institutions that offer both primary and secondary schools, so 45 teachers came from this type of educational institutions. And then a few words about the analysis. We started with thematic analysis, identifying, analyzing, and reporting patterns within the data. And we were interested to see what did the teachers describe the characteristics or behaviors or attitudes connected to students, anything related to students, either the bullies, the victims, or the classmates, whatever was there related to students. Then something on bullying processes in general, interventions, and finally on adults. And these were the broad categories that we started to work with. And then on the second round of analysis, we tried to identify types of challenging bullying cases. And what I'm going to present here today is very preliminary results. Here are the student teams. Personal characteristics were probably the ones that were most often mentioned. Difficulties in social and emotional skills. Then there were aggressive, callous, and unempathetic personal characteristics, and also behaviors related to students were quite often mentioned. Strong emotional expressions, crying easily, lying, teasing, sticking with previous fights, or another type of behavior, seeking for power, lying, threatening others. And you can already see that some of these behaviors and characteristics were, you can probably guess, were connected more to the bullies, and some of them more connected to the victims. And then the bullying processes in general, there were many that included notions connected to peer groups, bully group, and the classroom. So clearly these cases were not only about the bullies and victims, but somehow these cases were embedded in the classroom interactions and the classroom norms and social hierarchies. It was nice that Camilla also referred to this power play going on in groups, and this could be seen here as well. Adults, unfortunately also here, it came out that attitudes and beliefs were sometimes complicating the case, and also actions and behaviors were something that made the cases difficult as well. And many interventions were mentioned. Teachers really did very many things to solve out these cases. They had discussions, there were special pedagogical tools, disciplinary methods, parental involvement, other institutions and other personnel, and really a lot of resources were given to these cases in some descriptions. I won't go much into the detail, but I'll show you quickly these types. The first one was called annoying type, a victim. So these were continuous problems over the years, slow improvement if any, many parties involved and plenty of resource used. And if I really put it short, this might sound stereotypic, but this was very typical for the stories and descriptions that the students described in these cases. They were said to have clear deficits in social emotional skills, often problematic behaviors towards peers, and sometimes, not always, clear special education needs. And then again, the bully was the one that found the behavior of the victim very, very annoying or irritating. And this was the basic dynamic that kind of spread to the whole classroom, and even the peers kind of started avoiding the victim just to be able to live normal life. Another type that was often mentioned in the stories was the callous bully. Victim in these cases quite often was an ordinary student with some differing interests, hobbies and opinions, but the bully that sometimes was described to be impulsive, aggressive, but mostly and importantly did not obey rules or was skilled in manipulating others and seemed to be intolerant to interventions, so did not change his or her behavior. And sometimes others were afraid of this child, and other times this bully was very skillful in kind of inviting others and dominating the classroom and peer group climate. And it was notionable that there were continuous discussions and disciplinary actions taken, but sometimes the situation did not improve. In some cases, there were complex peer group dynamics. Shifting roles, troubles finding out who's the victim, who was the bully, and quite often the whole classroom was somehow involved. If not others were influenced, quite many students were, many students suffered, and sometimes the classroom behavior or the climate became very, very negative, I would say. And this quite often also required social emotional training, preventive work, and involvement of the welfare group, and somehow working with the whole classroom more than in other cases. Few extremely severe but seldom cases of online bullying or serious physical aggression was also described. Just the one occasion that was very severe, very harsh, difficult to tackle because of that. And then there were the problematic parents, overprotective parents that kind of, in a way, the teachers felt that they made their child to be the victim. And then there were another type of parents that did not actually accept the message that their child was, for example, a bully. They were denying everything, they were accusing the school and behaving in very many problematic ways. So, taken together, sometimes even many of these features were present in one story. So there could be a troublesome victim, a bully, very difficult peer group dynamics going on, difficult parents. So a really, in a way, a horror story. And I think this pointed the direction that many students involved would need support for a long period of time. And parents' role seems to be crucial in these ones. So many people need to come together, and a longer period of support might be needed in order to solve these cases. And the whole classroom is involved, and teachers' own role, which was a bit surprising, was not that often mentioned, and I think that's a future avenue. Teachers did not talk about themselves, their skills, their abilities a lot. Of course, that was not written in the pre-assignment to do so, but that was interesting to see that they did not reflect that much on themselves. And of course, tailored interventions are needed definitely in these cases. It's evident that these are such complex cases that some tailored interventions would be needed. So I really think investigating the mechanisms, the peer group dynamics, and finding explanatory factors are something we need to do in future, and exploring the role of teachers, as said, in depth in future. A lot of work to do there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last speaker for this oral session is Christian Everskog, and he will talk about how the Swedish Football Association work with child safeguarding. Welcome.
Yes, hi everyone. Nice to be here. The aim of this presentation is to give a brief overview of the work being done at the area child safeguarding within football by the Swedish Football Association, and present how we try to support our member clubs in creating a safe environment for children participating in their activities. We will also look specifically at our football summer camps and how we try to support our coaches in helping create a good environment for the children. So we can jump directly into the presentation. And who am I? My name is Christian Everskog. I have worked at the Swedish FA since 2009, starting at the competition department, now working at our education department, and working specifically in a group, a grassroots group, we call it. It's working with club development and children and youth football. And I have been given the role child safeguarding focal point at the Swedish FA. It doesn't mean that I'm responsible for everything concerning child safeguarding, but you can see me as coordinating the work and working as a contact person, both nationally and internationally. And I can also mention that I don't work full time with this. It's only one of my areas of work. We can also talk a little bit, a brief overview of Swedish football. We have about 3,000 member clubs, and of them, maybe 1,800 have children and youth football. And many times it's not us who have the direct contact with the clubs. We have 24 regional football associations that we try to support when they support the clubs in their work, with their club development. So we try to give good support in that area. And we are one of 72 members of the Sports Federation, also known as the Riksidrottsförbundet. And we are also members of the governing bodies of football in both European, UEFA, and globally, FIFA. As I did mention briefly, we have 24 regional football associations, and we have recently made sure that each of those offices also have a person that have the role as a focal point at the FA there, so they can help the clubs when they get in contact with the football association, the regional football association. And it can be both concerning proactive work and reactive work. We can also point out that it's the sports federation that have the active and leading role when it comes to child safeguarding. And our 24 regional officers are supposed to work in cooperation together with those regional sports associations, sports federation offices, that there are 19 in the whole of Sweden. So an important part of my work is to coordinate and make sure that they work together, and the collaboration works smoothly. So, and yeah, often we get noticed by the sports federation that there is a concern by a parent or a coach or things like that, that it's something going on in the club that's maybe not right. So then we take a contact with the district, and they maybe take help of the sports federation to handle this case, depending on what kind of issue it is. Concerning the proactive work, I can mention that when you take part in the coach education at the Swedish FA, you get introduced to the youth lines for the guidelines for youth football. And that's a booklet and a web page called Footballs Play and Learn, also known as Fotbollen spela, leker och lär. And yeah, you can see the folder here, or the document, the booklet. And it is the base for our children and youth football. And it points out the importance to have the focus on the child and their experience of football. And this is summarized by the 5 guidelines for youth football. And they are football for all, on the children's terms, focus on enjoyment, effort and learning, sustainable sport participation, and fair play. The document also references to the UN's Convention of the Rights of the Child and point out what Swedish football think are important to implement in the activities of the club. The document can also be used in more overarching way or by the individual coaches. And we also provide material how you can work with this to implement it in your club. Moreover, we have had a dialogue with important stakeholders to create a flow chart that the clubs can use when they handle cases concerning child safeguarding within their clubs. And that document both show how you can handle the case and also provide information about who you should contact depending on what's the issue. So both within and outside of sports. So the club has to work with the document first to make sure that they have the relevant information, but we point out this is good contacts you need to have. It could be the social care, or it could be the local or the regional association or the sports federation, and so on. And here we come to the football summer camps. That's another one of my working with the football summer camp, and it's known as Fotbollsskolan Lira Blågult. The children that participate are mainly between the ages 6 to 12, and the groups they often divided into groups of 10. It is the clubs who arrange the camp, but we provide the concept and the material to use during the activity. And one part of this training that we support is the training of the coaches. And the coaches are mainly the club's own youth players, who often are in the ages 15 to 18. And in 2021, this year, we did in cooperation with our anti-bullying organization Friends, create a leaflet and the material to support these young coaches in their role as coaches during the camp. For many of the coaches, it's their first experience as a coach, and they are future coaches within football. So it's very important to point out the importance of making a football a safe and enjoyable experience for the children participating in the football summer camps. And the leaflet looks like this. And this material is discussed during the training that take they take part in a short time before the football summer camp starts. And it contains suggestions about things to do and think about, and some exercises you can do with a group. This is just the leaflet, and then moreover, it's separately provided more full document with containing more information and exercises if you have the time and opportunity during your specific football summer camp to do even more. Thank you. And here you see the suggestions that the coaches take with them. Greet everyone arriving at the football summer camp. Be a role model. Act if you see anything inappropriate. You do the grouping, not the players. Do team building exercises. And sounds very simple, but during the training before the football summer camps, you discuss what can this specifically mean to do those things. So. And the future, what we'll do in future. But it's important to highlight even that it's been, of course, the child has been an important area for the Swedish Football Association a long time, and to create a safe environment for those participating. But it's just recently we have designated someone with a role as a child safeguarding focal point. So, and the person, me at the moment anyway, so work as a link toward the sports federation, and I can be a part within sports develop this area. So it's very important, and as a voice for a lot of the children participating or that are active within football, it's very important that we make our voices heard too. So we will also continue to have a dialogue with other organizations to make sure that everything we do and the material we provide is updated, and yeah, it's very interesting to be here to hear the research, and we take in research and we really think about if we develop the coach education and things like that we have taken in the latest research. One example of improvement that has happened is that the sports federation have created a clearer picture of what they expect of the different sports associations, among them, of course, us, the Swedish Football Association. That has been a big help. And also the international governing bodies, UEFA and FIFA, they also have made it clear what they expect from different national associations. And also that make it much easier to implement things within our own organization if other organizations have expectations on us, of course. But the work with creating a structure and competence for the proactive and reactive work has just started. So we will continue to have training and dialogue, and that means we will continue to meet the people designated with role, child safety and focal points at their regional associations, the 24, and in December we will have a new meeting where we will discuss what does it mean to have this role, what are we supposed to do, and also make sure that all the cases, every concern that gets noticed, that it's handled in a good way. So we'll continue to work on that. Continue to analyze our own organization to make sure that we do everything to create a good environment. And also, like a final thing, we will hope to continue our work with friends to see if we can create even more material that can help support the clubs in their work creating a safe environment for the children and youth in their activities. And also I didn't mention the material from the football summer camps. We will look at that and see if we can do even more for the next summer coming up. And that's me. That's just a brief overview of what we're doing. We are also doing something in Skolbollen, and that's also interesting when I heard about schools and what's going on there. So I need to follow up on this. So, but thank you for listening. This is my contact information. Contact me. Send me an email if you want to, or find me on LinkedIn if you want to get in contact. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Camilla Forsberg, Sanna Herkama, and Christian Everskog. Now we have some time for questions. If you in the audience would like to ask a question, we have some time now, and you can raise your hand, and I will tell the question again in the microphone, so that could be in the pre-recording. So if anyone has any questions. Yes?
Yes, I would like to ask Christian, do you have knowledge about how the children are thriving in the football, in the clubs? Like the culture is a little bit rough, you know, and I have personal experience of child like getting out of football because he couldn't handle being pushed all the time, being yelled at and everything. So do you know how the culture is in your clubs and how it affects their well-being, and do you know if the coaches are like willing to change the culture, because this has been for a long time like this?
I will try to summarize the question, and if the question was if in Football Association, Football's Club, how do you work with the culture within the different teams, and if if children quit because of the rough climate and perhaps pressure of succeeding in football or in playing, but I think the overall question is the culture within the sports club.
It's very hard to answer for all the 1,800 clubs, of course, and it looks very differently. But if I talk a little bit about what we are doing at the Swedish FA, it's, of course, we always work with the coach education, and we point out that it's important that you take the courses and you go the coach education, because we point out these things. But we also acknowledge that they need support. So we are looking at all over the country to make sure that they have like a mentor or a coach, someone they can talk with, and someone who can visit them and make sure that, are you really following what you did learn in the coach education? So of course, some clubs do a lot of this already in their clubs, and some are maybe not. So it's very hard. Yeah, I know what you mean. So, but we try to create things that makes it easier. If that's some kind of answer anyway. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we had time for one more question. Yes.
Just adding to this question with regards to clubs, but also parents. They put a lot of pressure on children to achieve, to score. I went to some sessions and I saw that parents are so into it, and they shout at their child, "You should score. Why you did that? And why you didn't do that?"
Yeah.
So there should be also, I think, something done about that.
Yes, I don't know if it was a question or reflection, but I summarize. Yeah. How do the federation work with parents having a lot of pressure to their children, how to perform on the football or the soccer team or in the soccer field? Yeah.
As I said, it's hard to be specific about that, and also that different clubs have good contact with the parents and really work with it if they acknowledge that this is going on, and others maybe less. But of course we try to work with all groups, even parents too, and we have club development going on where we let the parents get involved, and also you can say ask questions about the things to reflect about their behavior around the pitch. So, but as I said, it's I can't mention anything very specific in that area. But thank you for your question, and it's very important for us to make it better.
Thank you. Yeah, I think one more question. Yes, would you like to ask? Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering, I recently attended a seminar, a conference, and there was a socio-material perspective on work life. So how do you plan like offices and workspaces? And I started to think of that when I was listening to you, that what would, in your opinion, based on the results and ethnographics and the interviews, what would be an ideal football ground as a spatial, how would it look like, and how would the structures in school life be in order for the material to offer the best kind of ground for the interaction? Do you get what I mean? In a way?
It's a really tough question. Yeah, but I mean, I'm going to approach it like this, because the pupils, at least, that we've talked to, they address one thing that could in one way at least affect these interactions, and that is having grass instead. That might not end, of course, all of the rough gaming and all of these processes. It would maybe only mean that they might not escalate as much, they will not get as injured as much. And that is one thing. But I'm also thinking that the pupils are pointing at other factors that we could work with. That is, for example, the resources in terms of having various spaces that can suit many pupils' needs for what they want to do during their break time. And not only having a football pitch, like maybe it shouldn't be football there every day. You can change the activities. And some schools actually work like that nowadays. They have like a multi-arena. So it's not only football, some days it's scheduled with other activities. So that might be one way forward. But another aspect, because I think it's really important to listen to the pupils. Sometimes they have really good suggestions. And one aspect that they point out as crucial is actually the scheduling of break times. And to work with that as a factor, not being as many out there at the same time. Now, the Minister of Education said before that what happens in the classroom, I would add what happens in the school is a mirror of society, so we will not be able to deal with all of these issues, but working with scheduling might be a factor to at least look at. And maybe if we could afford to have grass or multi-arenas and then scheduled who can be there. Because that's what the pupils suggest. And more teachers out there, more teachers being there and supervising the break times. Yeah, I didn't really answer, but I sort of tried.
Thank you so much.